previous video, you have seen that I was solving questions related to inferences from the previous year questions, right? Even in this video, what we are going to do is we are going to continue the same topic and हम लोग कुछ और questions देखेंगे जो inference based questions है from the previous year papers, right? So let's just begin. So starting with the first question for today, that is, just give me a second. So starting with the first question for today, which is this. I grew up in a small town not far from Kalimpong. In pre-liberation India, everything arrived late. Not just material things, but also ideas. Magazines, old copies of Reader's Digest and National Geographic arrived late too. After the news had become stale by months or often years, this temporal gap. What is temporal gap? Temporal is related to time. Right? This temporal gap turned journalism into literature, new into legends, and historical events into something akin to plotless stories. But like those who knew no other life, we accepted this as the norm. The dearth of reading, dearth means the lack of reading, material in the towns and villages in socialist India is hard to imagine. And it produced two categories of people. Those who stopped reading after school or college, and those including children who read anything they could find, right? So इसकी वजह से क्या हुआ? There were two types of people who emerged. One were those who stopped reading after schools or colleges, and the other ones were those who read anything that they could find, right? So I read road signs with the enthusiasm that attached to reading thrillers. When the itinerant Kabadiwala, collector of papers, magazines, and rejected things, visited our neighborhood, I rushed to the house where he was doing business. He bought things at unimaginably low prices from those who'd stop having any use of them, and I rummaged through his sack of old magazines. Sometimes one day, when business was good, he allowed me a couple of copies of Sports World magazine for free. I'd run home and, ignoring my mother's scolding, plunged right in, consuming news about India's victory in the Benson and Hedges Cup. So two takeaways from these experiences have marked my understanding of the provincial reader's life. The sense of belatedness, that is, the things which are read late or the things which happen late, they are belated, right? Or everything coming late, and the desire for pleasure in language, right? So these are the two things that the reader had actually sensed after having read those stale newspapers from the Kabadiwala's shop, right? So here, speaking of belatedness, the awareness of having been born at the wrong time in history, of inventing things that had already been discovered elsewhere, far away without our knowledge or cooperation, is a moment of epiphany and deep sadness. Now, I remembered a professor's choked voice narrating to me how all the arguments he'd made in his doctoral dissertation, written over many years of hard work, for there indeed was a time when PhDs were written over decades, had suddenly become to naught after he discovered the work of CW, that is Bixby, right? So this, I realized as I grew older, was one of the characteristics of the provincial life, that they were saying tried things with the confidence of someone declaring them for the first time. That is, I grew up surrounded by would-be Newtons who claimed to have discovered gravity. There's a deep sense of tragedy attending this sort of thing. The sad embarrassment of always arriving after the party is over. And there's a harsh word for that sense of belatedness, dated. Right? So here he's trying to tell that just because there was lack of knowledge and just because the resources were not enough to get that knowledge, people couldn't even realize that the things that they claimed that they found were actually found earlier. Right? So here, what rescues it is the unpredictability of these anachronistic discoveries, the randomness and haphazardness involved in mapping connections among thoughts and ideas in a way that hasn't yet been professionalized. Right? Now, What, according to the author, is essential about the experience of being a provincial reader? What is the advantage, right? What is the essential? This is what is being asked. What is the essential here? Number one, belatedness in sense of coming late for everyone. Over-eagerness, accepting a temporal gap between what was current in the wider world and at the time at which these arrived in the provincial location, and none of these. So we know that the entire passage is somewhere or the other talking about this sort of acceptance. Hence the answer will be C. Right? I hope that is correct. Now, why did the author feel a sense of epiphany and deep sadness? So why did the author feel so? Why did the author feel so? Because the things that felt special and unique to the author were already established and accepted throughout in the wider world. Next, here it should be. Were already established and accepted thought in the wider world. Second, because the author was less well read. This is nowhere mentioned. Because the author missed being in a big city. Nahin, ye bhi nahi tha. So the answer that we have is A. So the answer is A. And that is what the correct answer is. Right? Now moving ahead to the next one. Which of the following option captures the meaning of the last sentence best? Let's just see the last sentence. So the last sentence says, the randomness and the haphazardness involved, what rescues it is the unpredictability of these anachronistic discoveries. The randomness and the haphazardness involved in mapping connections amongst thoughts and ideas in a way that hasn't yet been professionalized. Right? So what should be the main idea here? Okay, so let us see the answer. Let us see the questions. अब ऐसे questions जहाँ पे it is very difficult to understand the language of the sentence, just go through the options once. Right? Let's just see the options. Though the author feels provincial, she pretends to be from a metropolis. Metropolis means a modern city, right? Next. Though the author feels dated in her access to intellectual ideas, her lack of metropolitan sophistication lets her engage with the ideas with some originality. Okay? Though the author is aware of the limitedness of her knowledge, she is confident and can hold her own in a crowd. She is also proud of her roots in the small town. And all of the above. देखो, एक चीज समझो यहाँ पे. The three of these, they are talking about three different ideas. All of these तो हो नहीं सकता, right? That is quite sure, right? Now you see which one of the following suits the best here, right? See, the first one is saying, though the author feels provincial, she pretends to be from the metropolis. Nowhere is she pretending in the passage, right? Hence, passage A, answer A, option A is not the correct answer. See, though the author is aware of the limitedness of her knowledge, she is confident and can hold her own in the crowd. ये तो वो बोल ही नहीं रहा. Author is rather sad about the fact that she doesn't have access to knowledge, right? That much of knowledge just because she belongs to an area which is not a metropolis and is provincial, right? So the answer here would be B. Though the author feels dated in her access to intellectual ideas, dated here means late. Right? और कोर्ट्स में ना उन्होंने ऐसे dated भी लिखा हुआ था, right? Dated in her access to intellectual ideas, her lack of metropolitan sophistication lets her engage with the ideas with some originality. I hope that is clear to everyone. Now, let us come to the next question. Until the Keladi site was discovered, archaeologists by and large believed that the Gangetic plains in the north urbanized significantly earlier than the Tamil Nadu. So historians have often claimed that large-scale town life in India first developed in the Greater Magadha region of the Gangetic plain. This was during the second urbanization civilization. Tamil Nadu was thought to have been urbanized at the scale only by the 3rd century BC. Important fact again. Huh? Now, the findings at Keladi push that date back significantly. Based on the linguistics and continuity in cultural legacies, connections between the Indus Valley and archaeological evidences remained absent. Right? civilization or the IVC and the old Tamil traditions have long been suggested, but concrete archaeological evidences have remained absent. So the remains from the Tamil Nadu civilization and the IVC are somewhat or the other similar, yet strong archaeological facts evidences are yet absent, right? Evidences indicate similarities between graffiti found in Kiladi and the symbols associated with the IVC. It bolstered the arguments of dissent from the dominant North Indian imagination, who have argued for years that their ancestors existed contemporaneously with the IVCs. All the archaeologists I spoke to said it was too soon to make definitive links between the Kiladi site and the IVC. There is no doubt, however, that the discoveries at the Kiladi has changed the paradigm in recent years. The result of any new research on early India have invited keen political interest because proponents of Hindu nationalism support the nation of Vedic culture as fundamental to the origins of Indian civilization. Right? Now, the Kiladi excavations further challenge the ideas of single fountainhead of Indian life. Right? So they indicate the possibility that the earliest identity that can recognizably be considered Indian might not have originated in the North India. That wasn't all. In subsequent seasons of the Kiladi dig, archaeologists discovered that Tamil, a variant of the Brahmi script used for writing inscriptions in the early iteration of the Tamil language, could be dated back to the 6th century BC, likely 100 years before previously thought. So, not only had urban life thrived in the Tamil lands, but people who lived there had developed their own script. The evolution of writing is attributed to Ashokan edicts, but 2600 years ago, writing was prevalent in Kiladi. Manthan Karupia, a proud Madurai local, told me a farmer could write his own name on a pot he owned. The fight going on here is you are not the one to teach me to write. I have learnt it myself. So here basically the Kiladi excavations and how the Tamil Nadu civilization was similar, or how was it developed and how could they be known as the Indians, this is what is being talked about here, right? So this is what it is of the Indian civilization, right? So now the Kiladi excavation further challenges the idea of single fountainhead of Indian life. In elaboration to this sentence, which of the following option follows? अब आपको इस sentence से क्या समझ आ रहा है, आपको वो बताना है. Try to see the sentence and tell me. Okay. So dominant theories of how urban and modern life came about in ancient India were proved wrong by the Kiladi archaeological digs. See, nowhere have they been proved wrong, right? Nowhere have they been proved wrong, but they have given us more options to think about. They have given us more ways to think about, right? Now, neither the Indus Valley civilization nor the ancient urban civilization of Magadha are clear explanations of how urban life emerged in the Kiladi region of the southern India in the 3rd century BC. बट यहाँ पे हम इस चीज के बारे में तो बात ही नहीं कर रहे हैं, हम तो बात ये कर रहे हैं कि किलाड़ी एक्सकवेशन से हमें क्या समझ आती है, राइट? सो इवन दिस वुड बी द करेक्ट आंसर. नाउ कम टू डी. नन ऑफ द अबव तो हो ही नहीं सकता. लेट्स जस्ट सी सी. द किलाड़ी आर्कियोलॉजिकल डिग proved that Indian urban and modern life emerged independently in several historical periods and geographies, and no one theory is enough to explain it. Why? Because Kiladi भी तो हमें कितनी सारी चीजें सोचने के लिए force कर रहे हैं, right? Or they are just trying to make us more curious about these facts which have been revealed by the Kiladi excavations. I hope that is clear. Now, the next one. Language including a script similar to the Brahmi script emerged in the Kiladi in the 6th century BC. Which of the following is the most convincing conclusion from the statement? अब ये conclusion based question है, I agree, but अगर आपको ये conclusion solve करना है, आपको इस statement का meaning समझ आना चाहिए, right? And that is what you have to infer from here. Now, Kiladi is a center of culture and learning for superior to any other in the ancient India. ये तो कहीं पे भी नहीं कहा हुआ that it is the center of it, right? तो ये irrelevant हो गया. People of Kiladi were illiterate and could not use language to inscribe on their pots and pans. ये तो बिल्कुल ही opposite है, right? Because they have said that a potter could write his name on his pots, right? Then, ancient urban history of India as we know it today could significantly be altered by findings of the advances achieved by the Kiladi excavations, which is 110% true. Why? Because the facts have said that they have brought in new findings which could be useful for us, right? I hope that is clear. Now, come to the next one. A farmer could write his own name on a pod he owned. The fight going on here is, you are not the one who teach me to write. I have learned it myself. These sentences imply what? What do they imply? Imply means you have to tell the inference of it. That the Kiladi excavation was an inegalitarian one. Inegalitarian की तो बात ही नहीं हो रही यहाँ पे, right? That the Kiladi excavation did not conserve the access to education and literacy only for the elite, right? तभी तो जो farmer था और the potter, even he could write his name. Right? तो ये somewhat ठीक लग रहा है हमें. We'll just put a dot here so that we can come back to the option. And that the farmers of the Kiladi civilization were also potters. ये बातें कहीं नहीं हो रही है. ठीक है? तो अगर C नहीं है तो D भी नहीं होना चाहिए. So we are left with only A and B. Out of A and B, we try to understand that it was not an inegalitarian one. But here the example has been given just to show that even the people who were not the elite had the access to knowledge. Hence, the answer will be B. Right? I hope that is clear. Just see the question. Okay. So, okay, I did not tell you one thing, which was inegalitarian ka meaning. Inegalitarian means unequal opportunities in a society. Unequal opportunities in a society. So here they are trying to say that the Kiladi civilization was unequal for the people. The opportunities there were unequal for the people. But nowhere have they said that they were unequal. Rather, they want to highlight the fact that unlike the other civilizations of that time, these people were the ones who provided equal opportunities to the non-elites as well. Right? I hope this is clear. Both the paragraphs are clear to everyone. Now we come to the third one. The call of self-expression turned the village of the internet into a city, which expanded all time-lapse speed, social connection bristling like neurons in every directions. At 12, I was writing 500 words a day on a public life journal. By 25, my job was to write things that would attract ideally 100,000 strangers per post. Now I'm 30 and most of my life is inextricable from the internet and its mazes of incessant forced connections. This feverish, electric, unbelievable hell. The curdling of the social internet happened slowly and then all at once, the tipping point I'd guess was around 2012. People were losing excitement about the internet, starting to articulate a set of truism. Facebook has become tedious, trivial, and exhausting. Instagram seemed better, but would soon reveal its underlying function as a three-ring circus of happiness and popularity and success. Twitter, for all its discursive promise, was where everyone tweeted complaints at airlines and moaned about articles that had been commissioned to make people moan. The dream of a better, truer self on the internet was slipping away. Where we had once been free to be ourselves online, we were now change ourselves to ourself online. And this made us self-conscious. Platforms that promised connection began inducing mass alienation. The freedom promised by the internet started to seem like something whose greatest potential lay in the realm of misuse. Now, even as we become increasingly sad and ugly on the internet, the mirage of the better online self continued to glimmer. As a medium, the internet is self-defined by a built-in performance incentive. In real life, you can walk around living life and be visible to other people, but on the internet, for anyone to see you, you have to act. You have to communicate in order to maintain an internet presence. And because the internet's central platform are built around personal profiles, it can seem first at a mechanical level and later on an encoded instinct. Like the main purpose of this communication is to make yourself look good. Online reward mechanism beg to substitute for offline ones and then overtake them. This is why everyone tries to look so hot and well traveled on Instagram, why everyone seems so smug and triumphant on Facebook, and why on Twitter making a righteous political statement has come to seem for many people like a political good in itself. The everyday madness perpetuated by the internet is the madness of its architecture, which positions personal identity as the center of the universe. It's as if we've been placed on an outlook that oversees the entire world and given a pair of binoculars that make everything look like our own reflection. Which of the following? Now, the entire paragraph is based on what internet used to be and now what it has turned out to be, right? And that date has been given, the year has been given to be 2012, wherein everything just tipped over, right? And we were the ones who shifted everything. The internet shifted from Facebook being tedious to Instagram and Twitter, right? And how these different platforms have served for people and what are the expectations from an individual on these different platforms. Now let's just see the questions related to it. Which of the following statement can be inferred from the above passage? A direct question of inference, right? Which is very hard to see, but yes, they do come in the paper. So what should be the answer here? What should be the answer here? Let's see. The internet expanded very slowly. The internet can be used to cause harm. The internet is addictive. The main purpose of social media platforms is to dissuade people from showing off. ये तो बिल्कुल ही opposite हो गया, right? ये तो बिल्कुल ही opposite हो गया, right? They are not dissuading us from showing off, right? Everybody on social media is showing off their better side, right? So one needs to remember that this is something that they are not doing, right? The internet expanded very slowly. No, they're not saying that it expanded very slowly, right? Last one, the internet is addictive. They're not even talking about the addictiveness or the way it has turned out to be addictive for humans, right? They're not talking about that too. Rather, they are talking about the fact that the internet can be used to cause harm, right? Which is true here. I hope that is clear. That is why they are talking about the ways in which internet expects certain things from an individual, right? Now, which of the following comes closest to the underlined sentence in the passage? Now try to tell me which one is it? Which one is it? The way we use internet says a lot about who we are. The internet has reduced the distance between people living across the world. This was just one part of the entire passage, and this is something not there, right? Then the internet has the ability to customize what we access based on our identity. So, ये तो directly लिखा हुआ है. How can you infer that? Then the internet only shows us what we don't want to see. Now this is similar to C. Hence two answers cannot be correct. Also you can eliminate on this basis. Right? Now the only answer that we are left with is the way we use internet says a lot about who we are, the individuals, right? The individual identity, right? So this is what the answer here is, and I hope it is clear to everyone. Right? That is how we found the inference of it. Now, come to the next one. Down by the sandy banks of the Yamuna River, the men must work quickly. At a little past 12 a.m., one humid night in May, they pulled back the black plastic trap covering three boreholes sunk deep in the ground. They then dragged thick hoses towards a queue of 20-odd tankers, truck idling quietly with their headlights turned off. The men work in a team while one man fits a hose mouth over a borehole, another clamber atop a truck at the front of the line and shoves the tube's opposite end into the empty steel cistern attached to the vehicle's creaky frame. Onkar, someone shouts in English. Almost instantly, his orders to switch it on are obeyed. Diesel generators housed in nearby sheds begin to thrum. Submersible pumps installed in the borehole shaft drone as they disgorge thousands of gallons of groundwater from deep in the earth. The liquid gushes through the hoses and into the truck tanks. The full trucks don't wait around. As the hose team continues its work, drivers nose down a rutted dirt path until they reach a nearby highway. There, they turn on their lights and pick up speed, rushing to sell their bounty to factories and hospitals, malls and hotels, apartments and hutments across the city of 25 million. Everything about this business is illegal. The boreholes dug without permission, the trucks operating without permits, the water sold without testing or treatment. Waterworks at night works. Waterworks is night work. Right? So waterwork is night work, says a middle-aged neighbor who lives near the covert pumping station and requests anonymity. Anonymity means that he doesn't want his name to be revealed. Right? Bosses arrange buyers, labor fills tankers, the police looks the other way, and the muscle makers sure that no one says nothing to nobody. Teams like this one are ubiquitous in Delhi, where the official water supply falls short of the city's need. Right? So now you will be able to understand that what we are talking about. Because till now, it just seemed like an episode to us, wherein we could imagine what all was happening, but we did not know the context of it. Right? So a quarter of Delhi's household live without a piped water connection. Most of the rest receive water for only a few hours each day. So residents have come to rely on private truck owners. Right? The most visible strands of a dispersed web of city councillors, farmers, real estate agents and fixers who source millions of gallons of water each day from illicit boreholes and sell the liquid for profit. The entrenched system has a local moniker. Right? So the water tanker mafia. A 2013 audit found that the city loses 60% of its water supply to leakages, theft, and a failure to collect revenue. The mafia defends its work as a community service, but there is much darker picture of Delhi's subversive water industry. One of a thriving black market populated by small-time freelance agents who are exploiting a fast depleting common resource and in turn threatening India's long-term water security. So this is what they are saying, that this is what water mafia is about, and this is how they've explained how water mafia is actually hampering the resources and how it is actually selling it off in the market, right? Now, which of the following can be inferred from the passage? As you have already read the passage, you will be able to tell me which of the following can be easily understood from the passage. See the options. The water tanker mafia operation, though illegal, are justified given the vital service they provide to the people. No, it is not justified. Nowhere are we saying that it is justified. It is the mafia who is saying that it is a noble thing to do, but it is not justified. Now, the water supplied by water tanker mafias is potentially contaminated. ठीक है, लास्ट के पैराग्राफ में कहीं ना कहीं they said that this water was not filtered, right? Now, or treated. Now, come to the C. Private truck owners play the most important role in the operations of the water tanker mafia. ये भी हमने कहीं बात नहीं करी, या फिर अगर हमने बात करी भी है तो ये directly written है. And anything which is directly stated in the passage can not be an inference, right? Then, the water supplied by the water tank mafia is meant primarily for residential use. ये तो कहीं पे बताया ही नहीं हुआ ना. So, the only option that we are left with is B, right? It is potentially contaminated and इसका हमें direct answer कहाँ पे मिलता है, जहाँ पे ये बोला गया है that this water is nowhere treated or there are no evidences to say that this water is treated, right? That is what the answer is. Now let's just come to the fifth passage or the last passage of the video. Now, English encodes class in India. So it does so by sliding into the DNA of social division, income, caste, gender, religion and place of belongingness. The threat it possesses to social cohesion has worried public commenters across the political spectrum. In an address delivered as Independent India's Parliament, Delhi dallied over the suggestion to replace English with regional languages as a medium with regional language as the medium of instruction for higher education. Gandhi said that this belittling imposition of a foreign medium upon the youth of the country will be counted by history as one of the greatest tragedies. Our boys think and rightly in girls are taught English. Our boys think and rightly in the present circumstances that without English they cannot get government services. Right? Girls are taught English as a passport to marriage. 100 years later, the language continues to be seen as a tool of exclusion. The problem now is about inequality of access. To be denied English is harmful to the individual as well as our society, writes Chetan Bhagat. Self-appointed leader of a class war set off by unequal access to English. Bhagat, an engineer turned investment banker, wrote his first college romance in English in 2004. Then only a certain kind of people, someone who grew up reading, writing and speaking the language, wrote books in English. Big words, long sentences, literary pretensions, heavy with Orientalism. In the 10 years since Bhagat put the copies, all sold, with every new book. Bhagat put the popular English fiction. He has written 6 other novels and sold millions of copies all told. With every new book, all written in deliberated, simple English, Bhagat has resented the thousands of new soldiers in this crusade against what he calls the caste system around the language. Bhagat even has a term of Indians who have English in the 10 years since Bhagat put the With every new book, all written in deliberated simple English, Bhagat has recruited thousands of new soldiers in his crusade against what he calls the caste system around the language. Bhagat even has a term for Indians who have English. These people had parents who spoke English, had access to good English medium schools, typically in big cities, and gained early proficiency, which enabled them to consume English products such as newspapers, books and films. English is so instinctive to them that even some of their thought patterns are in English. These people are much in demand. The people presumably control through a nexus of privilege built ownership of English RE2, probably 10 times the E1s. So these are technically familiar with the language. But if they sit in an interview conducted by E1s, they will come across as incompetent, even though they may be equally intelligent, creative or hardworking. The situation may not be so comically stark. The haves and the have-nots may not exactly fit into Bhagat's stereotype of urban, sophisticated, rich people and provincial, uncultured poor. His argument does not factor in many other walls around English in India. You are more likely to learn English if you are born a man rather than a woman, high caste rather than low caste, South Indian rather than North Indian. There is more than one kind of E1 and more than one kind of E2. And there is more than one kind of E2 can overthrow E1s. One is to speak it like they know it. So here it is very clear they have given the views of Chetan Bhagat, and they have also mentioned one crucial topic here, which is how people get divided on the basis of language and specifically English language. So the people who are well versed, who have money, who are, even in that case, the gender disparity here has been mentioned, wherein the haves or the people who have been blessed enough to learn the language and the people who are not blessed enough to learn the language have been compared. Right? Now let us see the question, which of the following can be inferred about the author's view on English in contemporary India? Try to tell the answer. Read the options. Okay. So the ability to speak English in India depends on place and the social identity. Okay. Somewhat or the other it's correct. Next, English is not an English language, not an Indian language. ये तो कहीं नहीं उसने कहा. English language fluency does not necessarily imply competence. Does not necessarily imply competence. ये तो directly दिया हुआ है. So this can also not be an inference. People's view on English are divided along political lines. Political lines के बारे में बात ही नहीं हुई. So the only option that is left with us is A. Right? Now moving ahead. Who amongst the following would defy Chetan Bhagat's neat category of Indian speakers into E1 and E2? Savita, an above average student in an English medium school in Mumbai, belongs to an upper middle class family. Public speaking makes her extremely nervous and she fumbles through all her interviews. Moin, once a milkman in Ranchi, learns English at the age of 17. Living a lot of hard work, after a lot of hard work, he becomes an instructor of spoken English at a thriving institute. So which one would definitely be classified here? Just see the question and tell me the answer. The answer here is C, both A and B, right? Now, moving ahead. Now, which of the following best describes the author's response to Bhagat's views on English? Bhagat के views क्या थे? The author dismisses his views. Dismiss तो author ने कहीं करे ही नहीं उसके views. Right, next. The author completely agrees with his views. He did not even completely agree to his views. Then, the author neither agrees nor disagrees with his view. The author considers his views and finds that they lack nuance. So, the answer is D. Right? Nuance means somewhere or the other, they are not that well supported, right? Well thought of, hence the answer will be D, right? Now, moving ahead to the fourth one. Which of the following can be inferred from Gandhi's views with respect to English in post-independence India? English should not be taught as a subject in Indian universities. English proficiency is vital in order to gain entry into bureaucracy. Indian women cannot get rich if they do not know English, and none of the above. अब गांधी के views क्या थे? Let's just see that. ये मैंने highlight भी करा था यहाँ पे. Gandhi said that this blighting imposition of foreign medium upon the youth of the country will be counted by history as one of the greatest tragedies. Our boys think, and rightly in the present circumstances, that without English they cannot get government services. Girls are taught English as a passport to marriage. So what will be the inference of what he said? English should not be taught as a subject in the Indian universities. That is not what he is talking about, right? Then, English proficiency is vital in order to gain entry into the bureaucracy, which is correct. Government jobs नहीं मिल सकती लड़कों को. Then, Indian women cannot get rich. It is not only about getting rich. Hence, the answer is B, Bombay. Right? So, I hope this is clear to everyone. That was a set of 10 questions. 5 were discussed in this video and 5 were discussed in the previous video. If you have doubts in any of these questions, these are all the previous year questions for CLAT itself, right? If you have doubts in any of these questions, if you are not able to understand anything, please comment down in the comment section below and I will be solving your doubts. So with this, I will end the video here and I'll be waiting for your doubts, right? So with this, I'll rest the class here. I'll see you in the next class. Bye-bye. Take care.